I'm Olivia Clementine, and this is Love and Liberation. Today, our guest is Deborah Sundahl. Deborah is the leading expert on female ejaculation and the G-spot and a pioneering teacher in female sexuality since 1983. She is the author of the seminal book, Female Ejaculation and the G-spot. Her 35 plus years of groundbreaking contributions to this field include a line of videos titled the Female Ejaculation Sex Education Series, which Deborah produces and hosts. She lectures and gives workshops in North America and Europe, and has taught thousands of men and women how to integrate the G-spot and female ejaculation into their erotic lives. She continues to be a spokesperson for female sexuality and an advocate for sex education. Thought we could start going back in time before we move into the practicalities of the glorious water goddesses. I thought we could begin during the ancient times and some of the views of female fluids.
I like to think that Sappho and her students, she was a Greek teacher, very ancient, Lesbos, on the Isle of Lesbos. Okay, so these were lesbian women back then on the Isle of Mytilene, is what it's called today. I like to think they knew about it. However, there's no records on that. But we do know that Galen, who's a Greek, knew about female ejaculation. They called it liquor vitae. And they called it the water goddesses. That was what the labia lips, their name for the labia was the water goddess. They believed it contained an essence. And when that essence was combined with the essence in male ejaculate, it was responsible for creating new life. Isn't that nice?
Very, very
I love
nice.
that. So they debated its function and its properties. They did not debate its existence like we do today. Oh no. They were very familiar with female ejaculation back then.
In terms of the healing and sacred properties of female fluids during that time, you know, indigenous culture, tantric culture, there's such a deep reverence for sexual fluids. Could you speak a little bit on that as well?
Well, especially in Tantra culture, which Tantra is a religion, a science, a philosophy. It's at least 2,000 to 3,000 years old. There is a temple ruin that you can still see today in Karnataka, which has a statue carved of a woman ejaculating. And we know that Tantra had a Sanskrit name for the word ejaculate. Sanskrit is one of the oldest languages, from India. And it was called Amrita. And that means nectar of the gods. So again, we have this goddess theme, this nectar theme in ancient times. Tantra, as you may or may not know, believes that sex is sacred, and they actually built temples to worship in back then. Very different from what we have with our society today with sex. Harley Swift Deer started Kwadoshka, sacred sexuality in America out of the desert a few decades ago, and he says that there's a Native American tradition that knew about female ejaculation. And Taoism, their medical, I don't want to call it profession, but it was actually sexual. That's how they healed, through the body, through the acupuncture points in the penis, in the vagina, in the labia. So they definitely knew about the three waters.
In terms of those female fluids as well, it sounds like in previous times, they also were used a lot, not just to let them flow, but to use them on the skin or in to be actually imbibed.
That was the Japanese shunga artists of the 16th century. They love the erotic, prolific artists. And if you get any four-color, big art book that you would put a coffee table art book, you would see shunga art today, very distinctive. The genitals are overly large, and I have a picture of a woman ejaculating into a bowl because they drank it. And they believed that anyone who was fortunate enough to get ejaculate all over their body was going to be immortal.
It makes total sense.
It does. And according to Dr. Karl Stifter, he's a German doctor and researcher who wrote the very first book on female ejaculation called The Third Dimension of Lust. He wrote it in German. He is the one responsible for many of the ancient images we have today regarding this. And about the shunga artists, he said they would put the ejaculate into a bull's horn after it was warmed, and they would stuff the bull's horn with ribbons, silk ribbons. The Polynesian islanders, which are much more modern, they were studied by anthropologist Margaret Mead and German anthropologist Otto Finch. And they reported on their intercourse habits. And this is what they said, and I quote, a man would first stimulate his partner until she urinated, and then they would have intercourse. Well, we know today that stimulate her until she ejaculated, and then they would have intercourse. It brings to mind for me what the Greeks thought about female ejaculation, that there was something important in it for reproduction. The Western anthropologist, seeing that as urine, my thoughts are clear. It's like that was our Western lens that sees this as urine. That statue in the Tantra temple, we know darn well that was not urine. That's Amrita, nectar of the gods. So things changed quite a bit from ancient times by the time we rolled into the 20th century.
What do you think that is? Do you think part of it is a disconnection from instinct, or obviously a disembodiment, like not actually being connected to our sexual body, but to go from these two fluids, which I actually want to ask you about the difference between orgasm and ejaculation. But both of them, I mean, urine and ejaculation coming through the urethra, or during our, ancient time, do you think that they were more clear about it because they were more connected to themselves and more sexually embodied people, obviously, because they weren't necessarily doing it through dissections of the body in the way we do now in modern time?
Well, we know the Tantra people were very embodied with their sexuality, as the Taoists were. This we know for a fact. The rest I can't really speak to. Mm-hmm. Nature-based religions or cultures definitely would be more gentle with the body. Mm-hmm. And it's that gentleness that allows the ejaculate to flow. But when it's compartmentalized and studied under a microscope, and then woman has lived under patriarchy for at least 2,000 years, that fluid has diminished.
Can we get into the fluid?
Sure.
I guess even just dissecting a little bit, just so we have a better understanding, then we can open it back up a little bit. But I think for many women, they'll be shocked to know that they can ejaculate. Can you speak on first the difference between orgasm and ejaculation and why one would lean towards one or the other?
Yes, and this is a nice segue because it comes from Eastern spiritual traditions. The fact that ejaculation and orgasm are two separate functions. One is a release of fluid, the other is incredible pleasure, an orgasm. Okay. In men as well as women. So in Eastern spiritual traditions, namely Taoism, they taught the men how to separate ejaculation from orgasm. And in the doing, a man would stay hard longer. He could have multiple orgasms that streamed throughout his body. What could be better? What are we waiting for? Right. And so the same is true for women. Ejaculation and orgasm are two separate functions. In general, women ejaculate with an orgasm, but not always. For sure, you can ejaculate before an orgasm or after an orgasm as well, or not ejaculate at all, which is what most women are doing. So I like to say this in my lectures. Men ejaculate and urinate from their urethra. Women ejaculate and urinate from their urethra. We are the same that way.
For men, often there's so much around retention. Is there any reason a woman would want to retain her fluids?
No, there isn't a reason, and I'll tell you. Can you guess why?
Semen?
Semen, yeah. Right. 3 million semen. So the Taoists believed that when men ejaculate, that's their life force, a lot of life force going out of their body, which over time will age them faster than they need to be. That's why they said, develop this practice where you don't have to ejaculate, but you still have that pleasure. But for women, that's not the case. We're not having life force go out of our body when we ejaculate. We create life through our ovaries once a month. Okay, so we can ejaculate as much as we want. It's not going to affect our vitality. One important thing about prostatic fluid is this prostate has two functions in men and women. One is to create hormones. The other is to create and secrete fluids. So it is a watery organ by nature. And that prostatic fluid is the food and the protective environment for the sperm as they make their way to the egg. That's the function, that's the purpose of that prostatic fluid.
Would you want to share about the difference between the 3 orgasms and then really a deeper dive into specifically G-spot and clitoral orgasm?
Yes, I will share that. In my book, I use a study of orgasm from Singer and Singer, researchers and sexologists from 1979. Why so old? I don't know. And I don't think they've done any since then, if you can believe it. They had a beautiful continuum of orgasm, like a spectrum. And they had clitoris on one end, uterine on the other, and in the middle was the G-spot. And I think that's a excellent way to view it to this day. It's probably why there hasn't been studies. I don't think anyone could really beat that. what later researchers, Whipple and Perry, who did the famous book, The G-Spot, they discovered what they call the two nerve theory. And that is, for the clitoris, has the pudendal nerve. The G-spot, the prostates, both male and female, have the pelvic nerve, which is the pelvic branch of the vagus nerve, one of the most powerful nerves in the body. So, two different nerves, two different orgasms. With the clitoris, it's like, we know this well, rapid stimulation, whether it's a jerk off or a vibrator, shallow, panting, then hold your breath, clench up your body, and you have a pretty good orgasm. It's mostly located in the genital area or the pelvic area. Whereas the G-spot orgasm, the prostate orgasm, the vagus nerve orgasm, whatever you want to call it, it's the same. The vaginal orgasm, these are all the same. It starts in your toes. It's a full body orgasm. It'll make your legs shake. It spreads up your body through your pelvis and torso and out your head. I mean, you can see stars. You can black out. It is powerful orgasm. For that to build, and that's the key word, to build this pleasure throughout your body, you have to do three things. And they're tantric basics. You take an intro to tantra course, you learn these three things. One, movement. You have to move your body. You can't clench it. Two, breathe. You have to breathe. And it's not real fast like they do, Tantra does for what I call bliss orgasms. This is you breathe. You're breathing down into your pelvic floor. You're feeling that root. And that root is that prostate, with stimulation, which is slow and steady, right? Slow down, no vibrating, none, zero, forget it. That's how you have that orgasm. And then the third orgasm is what Singer and Singer said on their spectrum, the uterine orgasm. Okay. That's backed by the cervix. Today they call it the cervical orgasm. For a while there, they were calling it the A spot. This is all the same thing. And again, Singer and Singer tell us it's the peritoneal lining. There is this ultra-sensitive lining that surrounds the torso, protecting all the organs in the torso. Peritoneal. And you can access this lining, as I quote Singer and Singer, a man who has long fingers can get back. It's like on the side of the G-spot of the cervix. You don't go in the mouth of the cervix. That's not what we're doing here when they say cervical orgasm. The orgasm is along the side of the cervix, because the head of the cervix kind of protrudes a little bit into the vagina, like a little cap. So that orgasm can really send you off the planet, is deep, and it's just really delicious. I think it just expresses itself for women as just this, there's something really deep inside me that, I would just love to access and discover what that is and release it. It's been a bit of a mystery that way. And so that's basically, I think, the three of them. some hesitation. I don't want to say there's only 3, and yet I also want to say, yeah, 3. It helps us to understand ourselves, because there's a lot of confusion still today. So it's good to just get these pieces down. And if we do that as a collective, maybe the next generation or 2 can go a little farther from that.
I like that perspective. In terms of the clitoral and G-spot orgasms, can you speak on the nerves? Because what you were saying about the vagus nerve and just how important that is, because that really impacts the flavor of the orgasm, and same with the clitoral and its connection to its nerve.
It does impact the flavor for sure. And there's a whole book written on the vagus nerve. And the Porges, Porges, he's the one who did the polyvagal theory and brought this into our attention only not too long ago, decade or 2, I think. But this is the pelvic branch of the vagus nerve, one of the most powerful nerves in the body. It's the nerve we use for meditation. It's the antidote to the fight or flight nerves or response. It helps us access those deeper theta waves and gamma waves that you access when you're in meditation. So why it's powerful has to do with, it's just this nerve is one of the longest in the body. And it's emotional, this nerve. So when you have this G-spot orgasm, you emote. You can cry, you can scream, you can laugh. You've released not only liquid, you release emotion. And for women, this is great. And that's the biggest reason why women don't ejaculate, is they sense is letting go not only of the fluid, but of the emotions. They sense there's something really large or big in there. And what is it? And truly there's fear of it. Don't know if they want to let that out. So that's the wild woman orgasm. This isn't your teeny little Victorian orgasms. Ooh, this is like, oh my God, yes, that's more what we're dealing with the G-spot orgasm.
I mean, what do you feel like on both ends? I'm thinking of the women have had some variety of trauma, sexual trauma. And so certainly that already inhibits the safety or comfort of feeling willing even to open up this part of them. What do you do? Because you have these workshops with tons of women, all learning at the same time how to have these G-spot orgasms. What do you do if you know that a woman has a very sensitive background and she's hesitant to enter into that field? What are ways to begin one's self-process, one's, I guess, vaginal inquiry, vulvic inquiry?
Yeah, this is the other thing that I introduce women to, is how to have a relationship with this prostate. And it's basically self-love, self-care. I go step by step, mindful touch. So millimeter by millimeter. Because you say slow, women don't know what slow is. So that allows, with the vagus nerve, to access a deeper place. And because it's the truth of the body, when you do that, you just breathe and relax and total attention on an area of your prostate. and it's loving. The prostate, begins to trust you, and you do build a relationship, and things get revealed. But it just doesn't stick into one place. You experience it all. So there is something very unique that's going on there as far as rewiring a whole lot of sexual pathways that need to be rewired because of our culture that we live in, with its serious taboos and injuries and assaults. There's not a whole lot of other feelings there to find, except give me a great orgasm, and then the rest of it is like horrible. I don't want to look at it or talk about it. So through that process, I've found that that's a much gentler and effective way to deal with trauma. Now, that said, I do not deal with trauma. And if women who are sexually traumatized, it's a two-step process there. They work with that with their therapist and other ways. And they come to me when they've in a process have healed that basically, and now they're ready. They have strength. They want to take on something new, something good around their sexuality.
That's good to know. Well, now we'll imagine that everybody listening is moving in that direction, or has hopes of it, or they're already there and they're like, where is this G spot that supposedly it's so hard to reach, and I'll probably never have a G spot orgasm. I first just wanted to say that I heard you tell somebody recently that you've never experienced anyone you've worked with not have a G spot orgasm. We should just make sure that that's in everybody's ears right now.
That's true. All women can have a G-spot orgasm because all women have a G-spot, and it works.
It works. It works.
I'm a feminist, and I went to the University of Minnesota and studied women's studies in the 80s, early 80s, and lies, secrets, and silences. Women's studies was about learning about women's contribution in every aspect of society, because it was diminished, and you didn't even know there were women doing these amazing things. So when I've heard about the female prostate, which is what the G-spot is, and that, according to Alexander Skene, a Victorian doctor, he said, no, women don't have a functioning prostate. It's just two glands that sometimes become clogged. I'm like, wow, have I heard this story before or what? Yeah, right. Okay, women don't have a prostate, but men do, and it works. Women just have a little vesicle of a little shard left of, and it gets clogged up. So we're just incompetent. We're always in pain. These are the stories about women, and they're not made right. Our bodies are not made right. So we've heard this story before. So yeah. Ladies, you have a prostate. It surrounds your urethra canal. It starts at the outside opening of the body, and it's sprinkled along the urethra about 2 inches. We know the male prostate also surrounds the urethra canal, but it's located back by the bladder. Again, the female prostate surrounds the urethra, but it's located at the outside opening of the body. The male prostate has 2 ducts and glands. The female prostate has up to 34 ducts and glands, and it's when we say sprinkled, it's sprinkled like a vine. Imagine a vine with a lot of leaves, you know. And they like to call the prostate a chestnut shaped or walnut shaped, and the female prostate is vine like. So we have this nature motif. I like that. If you are just inside the vagina, and I mean at the opening of the vagina, okay, that is the prostate under the tissues there. And as you slowly slide your finger in the vagina up to the first knuckles, ladies and men, the first knuckle, not the third or even second, but just inside the vagina, that's where you'll feel the famous ridges of the G-spot. That's what I call the body of the G-spot. And if you pull your finger out and trace it around the urethral opening, there's a little meaty area there, Latin called urethral meatus, okay, meaty area that surrounds the urethral canal. That's what I call the head of the G-spot. The prostate is just under those tissues there. This prostate hangs down through the roof of the vagina. Okay, so it's like a half moon hanging down. It's not a little thing. Oh, and then if you continue with your finger along the body, go up to like the second knuckle, and your finger's going to start to curl. And what it's doing is it's curling around the back end of this organ that again hangs down through the roof of the vagina. It's big. You can see it. That's everyone's homework. Do you want me to give them?
I love homework. I love it being given. Please.
Get out a mirror and sit on the floor. Put the mirror in front of you, you know. Bend your knees. Put the mirror between your knees. Take 2 fingers on each hand. 2 fingers each hand. Place one hand on each labia. Gently spread your labia apart. Push out with your pelvic floor muscles, your vaginal muscles, and see if you can see your G-spot. Now you have to have good lighting. I say put the lamp on the floor and really light this up. Better yet, sit in the light of day. Let the sun shine in. Okay. And see your G-spot. Some women will see it immediately and they'll be like shocked. Some women have to try this 3 or 4 times in the same setting, but because they're not used to pushing out their pelvic floor muscles. Or their labia are more meaty and they have to kind of pull the labia a little deeper and push out a little farther. But it's not because the prostate's in a different position. It just has to do with the shape of their labia and their vulva.
So helpful, that whole entire detailed explanation. I really hope everybody does their homework and gets back to us with their experience. In terms of accessing this glorious G-spot, what do you think are the best ways for someone to do it with themselves and then in partnership for arousal purposes?
What I teach in the workshop is this awareness. First, to do this practice that I just described, and then to go inside and shutting your eyes and just with your finger, okay, I saw the head. Now this is what it's like to touch it very, very slowly. Okay, I saw the body. Okay, this is what it's like to touch it. This is where it's located. And then in the back, you couldn't see it, but this is what it's like to have it touched. This is huge. Huge awareness. Just this simple thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you do that 4 or 5 times over the course of a couple weeks, sending love to your prostate, doing small circle type caresses, almost like a massage, but very slow. And you build a connection there and self-love there. And it's from that place that you can build erotic pleasure. Because now you know where it's located. You know what you're touching precisely. You know. And you can't be fooled when you know. When you have that knowledge, no one can tell you differently after that. That is autonomy. That is power, self-empowerment. That's what that means right there. And then you go that step further where you start to feel, well, you can walk around, cook, you can feel your G-spot, it just becomes alive in your body. So then when you get like the right sex toy, which is what a woman should get, she should just get a really good sex toy with a ball at the end. That's all you need. It's just very simple with a ball at the end. Because this ball, when you insert it, it'll kind of pop up at the back of the G-spot. And when you pull firmly forward, very slowly pull firmly forward on the back, that's going to feel amazing. At that point, it's those Tantra things that I mentioned, in and out, so slow with the toy, very slow. Back and forth, moving your hips, breathing, you'll feel the pleasure. So it's a dance that you have with the pleasure. It's not like, I want you to have a fantastic orgasm and I want it now. I mean, we have laid trips on our prostate, and sometimes the first response she's going to have to you is like, take a hike. Mm-hmm. She's going to be cold and she ain't going to have nothing to say to you. But if you are sincere and you really want this relationship and you're ready to approach it in a whole different way, she's more than happy to embrace you. Mm. And it's from that place that you can have these full body orgasms with the toy, with the breathing, and standing up, getting off your back. It's a full body orgasm. You have to move your body, and it's difficult to do that on your back on a bed. Plus, that's the way you have the clitoral orgasm. So get up, stand up, kneel over your bed, or kneel over a countertop, or kneel over a chair seat, something like that. Mm. Find another position where you're more upright. Was that helpful?
That was very helpful. And I imagine you use similar positions. If you felt firmly in relationship with your G-spot, then you would do that in partnership.
Yeah. That's when you bring it to a partner, because then you know your body. This is your body, your orgasm, your responsibility, period. But it's not just women, men will do it too. Then you can really dance together in this new territory of this prostate orgasm, this full body orgasm. It is a new door that we're opening up.
The gifts of aging, to me, when I think of aging over time and the physical body, one thing that excites me is the deepening in sexual practice, to actually evolve in that and to see what is unveiled. But I find the culture that we're in, it seems to be the opposite message. It's like, when you age, you really should disconnect from these divine fluids. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on aging and sexuality.
I tell people in my lectures that sexuality does not die as you get older. Rather, it shifts. And it shifts from the hot, passionate, franticness of youth to more quiet wisdom. Okay? That's what we're supposed to do when we get older. The elder is about wisdom. We've lived a long time. Hopefully we have something deep to, and especially for women, I noticed as soon as they reach menopause, in general, women have had their children, they're almost grown, and it's time for them. And if they don't get that soft caressing and that gentle attention sexually with their body, they'll turn off. And they feel like they don't have that pounding hormones. Well, you don't. The hormones are no longer pounding at the door, but it doesn't mean they left. They're still there. Just open the door. They're going to be staring at you, smiling. And what is the door that we open? For women, it's the soft touch. It's the self-care. It's the feminine. We don't have to, it's our time. So that's the shift. And it's the same for the G-spot when you go slow and steady, or instead of it, you don't say stimulate, you say massage. This allows a woman to relax because there's a prostate here, right? And we're like ramming away at it. Women are tense. They're like, no. We may not know there's a prostate there. Well, I'm sorry, your body does. And it's like, whoa, okay, that shuts down. That's why women feel numb or pain. They've just shut that down. It's too much stimulation. So now that we know there's a prostate there, slow down. And this works wonderfully through old age to death. That is the life force, and it serves you throughout your life. It does not go away in old age. And it because that is revitalizing and healing to the body, all those hormones that are released. And this is something that helps us with age.
Well, before we close, is there anything else you'd like to share? Any last words? Anything that feels really important to you in this moment?
Only that sexuality is very, very important. It's very denigrated in our culture. And we tend to think it's a simple thing that everybody kind of learns from birth, but that's not the case at all. Porn is not sex education. It's not what people do in their bedrooms. Sex education for adults is very new. It's just like a decade old. And finally, we're starting to even hear the word sex educator, but they're hard to find on the internet. So to seek the quality information and to continue to experience and experiment in your bedroom with your partner and yourself. This is love. How do we express love? This is how. This is how. It's not just orgasm and porn and kind of jacking up the pleasure into a fetish. Let's go another way in the path. We go toward what does it feel like with love? This is our new door that we're opening. This is where we're headed.